podcast is a TJ DeSantis production. Accounts, descriptions, and samples of this audio may not be disseminated without the consent of its creator or TJ DeSantis Productions, LLC. For information, email tjdesantisproductions@gmail.com. You're getting Beatdown after the bell. Beat down after the bell. The best late stoppage in mixed martial arts. Beatdown after the bell. Here's your host, TJ DeSantis.
Oh my goodness. Hey everybody, it's Beatdown after the bell of UFC 248. Adesanya versus Romero. And honestly, I don't even know where to begin. A lot of times in mixed martial arts and post-fight, we talk about the ebb and flow of a fight and the energy level of an athlete that goes through, a daunting, grueling battle. And sometimes the term adrenaline dump is thrown around. And I'm going to say that there was a big adrenaline dump tonight. But I think it was on the people watching this card around the world, because we had a Hall of Fame type performance in our co-main event when Wally Zhang put on a absolute classic with Joanna Jędrzejczyk. And I mean, Daniel Cormier was basically saying, we've got another fight. We got to do one more fight after this one. I felt this pain. And then I think we all felt a little bit of pain after Israel Adesanya and Yoel Romero go 25 minutes. Adesanya still your UFC middleweight king. Hey everybody, I'm TJ DeSantis along with Dean Thomas. And Dean, I mean, I'm not being hyperbolic when I say this. I feel like tonight was a grueling and daunting affair, and all I did was sit on my couch and watch these fights and take some notes.
Yeah, man, tonight was crazy.
Right.
It was so back and forth, so up and down. For the most part, I enjoyed it, but I mean, obviously, I'm not one to throw shade, so I'm not even going to throw shade on, that main event. There are reasons and explanations, I think, why that fight went the way it did. So I'm not even going to hate on them guys.
When I say that I feel like I've been through a daunting, grueling battle, I don't mean that in a disrespectful manner to Israel Adesanya or Yoel Romero, because I think, Adesanya said he did what he needed to do to win. And I mean, that's what sports are all about. It's about, I mean, to quote the great Herm Edwards, you play to win the game. And Israel Adesanya played to win the game, and he won the game. Whether you agree or disagree, that's up for conjecture. I think a lot of the issue where people will say, this main event, and maybe, echo the words of Yoel Romero saying, this is a fight that people didn't pay for this fight. This isn't what you throw down your money on ESPN Plus for. I think maybe we wouldn't be feeling necessarily as adamant about that if the co-main event didn't deliver on such a high level. Like, no matter what followed Zhang Weili and Joanna Jędrzejczyk, it was going to be a bit of a letdown. Like, when you think about concerts, you have the main event or the headlining act, and if there's a really good band that sort of steals the energy earlier in the night, we kind of have a flat audience for the final crowd, or for the final act. And I think you were going to get that no matter what when you look at Adesanya and Romero. But I don't know.
Like, it's an interesting point. I mean, at some level, I do think there is some truth to that. But at the same time, at the end of the day, man, like, you're right, man. These guys are there to win. And coaching a champion, I coached Tyron Woodley to a title, and I watched him lose it. And your life changes significantly when you lose. So you do whatever you can in order to maintain that strap. And if Israel Adesanya says, this is what I needed to do in order to maintain my belt, I will perform for you next time, then, you got to take his word for it, because, prior to this fight, everybody was riding him hard.
Right.
Now, he did what he had to do in order to win. And based on his skill set, that was pretty much the only thing he could have did to win that fight. So, and not much more, after watching them two guys get in there. Like, Yoel's just so dangerous, man. You can't take too many chances. But, the thing is, if that's what we got in the main event, we should just appreciate what we got in the co-main event and just ride out with that. Because I mean, that fight we got in the co-main event was fantastic. It was remarkable. I had a story to tell. These girls put everything on the line. It was back and forth. You didn't know who won. I mean, it was a crazy good fight. So even though it wasn't the main event, to me and in many people's eyes, that co-main event will serve as the main event. And I'm just happy we got the chance to see that fight.
History has a unique way of being remembered, and while this was, 248, Adesanya versus Romero, I think a lot of people are going to walk away, thinking maybe 5 years down the road that it was UFC 248, Zhang versus Yeon Jacek, because they really stole the show and stole it in a way where if people weren't familiar with Zhang Weili, like I feel like they not only know her now, but like how can you not be a fan of hers? And obviously, Joanna is someone who's been in the strawweight spotlight for quite a few years now. This was a fight for the ages, one that I really don't think there was a loser here. I mean, how can you say that anyone came out of that fight looking poorly?
So here's my thing, especially when it comes to Joanna. Like, I've been familiar with her for such a long time. I mean, obviously, watching her and studying her. And now, I mean, she's been training in my gym for the last 3 years or so. And I have never been more of a fan of her than I am now at this moment, based on, one, how she performed in that fight. I mean, she went through a lot, man. She took a lot of adversity. She took a lot of punches that I did not think she was capable of taking. The fact that Rose put her down with a simple jab. I was concerned about her fighting Jean, and she took everything Jean threw at her. And not only that, but she was so gracious after the fight, so respectful, that you had to be a fan of her. It was a different Joanna, because the Joanna we had seen before and lost was like, no, I didn't lose that fight, or no, I didn't tap her, no, just making excuses and denying the fact that she lost. But in this fight, she congratulated the champ. She put up a great fight, and many people thought that she won. For me, I wasn't scoring it. I was watching as a fan. Many people thought she won. She can argue that she won. Me, I'm like, it could have went either way.
Right.
But the fact that she was so close to winning and just said, you know what, the champ fought great. I'm gonna go back and do my thing, and props to her. Yeah, I'm a big fan of her now.
Looking at Joanna, I think she answered a lot of questions in the sense of, it seemed like her weight was on point. She was in a grueling, daunting battle, never really took a step backwards, took a lot of shots. You mentioned, the strike that, Rose landed on her and put her down, taking away her title. Like, I'm not worried at all about Joanna, moving forward in the strawweight division. In fact, Dean, I think even in defeat, her stock may be rising a little bit. Like, whoever is going to be in her way, better be ready for, the vintage Joanna Jacek. And I mean, she's a tough opponent for anybody. And I think it's going to be very, very difficult for the UFC not to put her back into a title fight with maybe 1 or 2 more wins, because you can't tell me that you want round 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 immediately. That truly was a classic.
Absolutely. In fact, if I was Joanna, I think there's a lot of compelling fights for her. In fact, I don't even like her fighting at 115. I mean, she obviously looked great in this fight. She looked decent against Michelle Waterson, but she looked great in this fight at 115. But I thought that because she's a bigger girl, her legs, like, you ever see her legs, like her calves and her legs are and her thighs are all one size, but they're bigger. And I always thought that she would fight better at 125. And I would, if I was her, I think there's a lot of compelling fights for her at 125, even if she wants to fight for a title at 115, just to take some different fights in 125. I think there's a lot of fights at 125 that she can move up in weight, win those fights, dabble back and forth and fight for a title at 115, because I do think that she has a better opportunity to win the title at 115 as opposed to 125. I can't see her beating Valentina at any time, but obviously I could see her beating Jean or Rose if they fought again, or if Andrade happens to be the title holder.
Right. He's Dean Thomas. I'm TJ DeSantis. This is Beatdown After the Bell here on Between Rounds Radio. We're burying the lead a little bit, and I think, for good reason. Zhang Weili and Joanna Jacek, such a great performance that it really is the story of the night. But the main event was Israel Adesanya successfully defending his title against Yoel Romero. The great Matt Hughes once said, and not that he's the only one to say this, but to say that you can't really solidify your championship status until you defend your title. And now Adesanya has done that. It's weird to think that he, is only in his first title defense, being that he beat Kelvin Gastelum for an interim belt and then, fought Robert Whittaker. This guy's been in the championship spotlight for a very long time, but tonight it is official. One successful title defense under his belt. And I wonder if the nerves of that situation and also the nerves and the spotlight of fighting in Las Vegas against Yoel Romero didn't get to Adesanya a little bit, because he fought, a bit uncharacteristic of what we've seen in the past. I thought he handled himself in the post-fight interview a bit out of the ordinary for him. I mean, giving the fans and the camera the middle finger. Israel Adesanya, I mean, maybe this is a one-off sort of thing, but he's a fan favorite. He really wasn't himself in a variety of ways in this fight, Dean. What do you think about that? Do you think that this is something that he'll learn from and be better, for going forward?
For sure. Obviously, I think that was kind of a PR nightmare what he did is after the fact. When, I think that he should have took the approach of, hey, listen, Yoel Romero is a dangerous guy. I felt his swing early in that first round, and I didn't want to get hit by that. Right. I'm going to be honest with y'all. He's a guy that Darren Till admitted to be afraid of. You know what I'm saying? So, He's a guy, and we all understood. When Darren Till was like, hey, I don't want to fight this guy, we were like, yeah, I get it. Nobody wants to fight him. Right. So, if he went out and said, listen, I took this fight. I didn't have to take it. I'm not trying to lose my belt. This guy hits hard. I had to fight him like this. Y'all saw my performances before. Y'all know what I'm capable of. You know what I'm capable of doing next time. That's the approach I think he should have took. I think he went the wrong route by saying, oh, yeah, I kicked his legs. His legs are going to be hurt tomorrow, because, really, that's kind of like, come on, man. Really, that's how you thought you won this fight? It might have been how you won this fight, but at the end of the day, we wanted to see more.
Right.
But so I think he should have been more apologetic and kept the fans like, listen, I promise y'all, give me a quick turnaround, give me another opponent, somebody that's going to come at me, somebody I can put away, but I'm sorry for this performance. And I think the fans will still stick with him, but I think he went the wrong route with the way he handled that.
Yoel Romero, got on the mic and accused Adesanya of running from him, and they said in the booth, essentially, it does take two to tango. How much of the timidity of this fight do you feel was also maybe on Yoel Romero? Does he have some, responsibility in the way?
Some responsibility. Some. Come on. He started the fight and set the pace.
That's true.
By standing in the middle and not doing nothing for the first minute. He set the pace that way. Just being lazy right there. That you set the pace that way. That started the entire fight. He has and he says, oh, he ran from me. He didn't exactly run from you. You weren't exactly chasing him the whole time. It was like you were chilling, and then you'd race after him, and he'd move. But it wasn't a pressure fight that you were putting on him. If you were putting a pressure fight on him, we would have had to see him do more. We would have gotten more out of both of you. So Yoel is just as much to blame. If he's not just as much to blame, he's not in a position to criticize for the way that Adesanya fought. He can't do it because he didn't give him the opportunities that Adesanya wanted.
Looking at your pre-fight breakdown on Between Rounds, you talked about Romero's pace in a fight and mentioned that Israel Adesanya could potentially take advantage of the fact that, Yoel Romero does take off rounds. He, has to control his cardio to ensure that he can go 25 minutes. And that was definitely something that we saw tonight. Yoel Romero took rounds off. However, I think he took the first round off, which, in the history of fighting, Dean, I don't know if I've ever seen a fighter take the first round off.
Well, he took the first round off and a lot of the other rounds. But here's the thing, though. Adesanya didn't take full advantage of it the way I thought he would. Because he couldn't. Because while Yoel Romero was taking those rounds off, he was still dangerous. He was still waiting and still baiting. He wasn't just taking those rounds off. He was still baiting while he was doing it. So it didn't give Adesanya a full opportunity to attack the way I thought he would. And he wasn't crafty enough. You saw how fast Romero moved. The way he delivers going forward, his speed going forward was incredible. And Adesanya just had to be careful with that. So, it was just stylistically and where these guys are mentally in their careers, just stylistically, it was a horrible matchup, and it's something that you can't really foresee until it's over because like you just don't know where they're at in their career. Like even with that skill set, their skill sets, if they were just like, you know what, I don't care about my career, I'm going out to fight hard, we would have saw a better fight. But where they're at in their careers, they weren't willing to do that.
Looking at the scorecards, it was unanimous for the champion in Adesanya, 49-46 and then 48-47 twice. MMAdecisions.com, one of my favorite resources on fight night, excuse me, looks at all of the scorecards from the judges and then select media members and sort of compares them. And looking at it, we have 18 media scores. 11 lean towards Israel Adesanya, 6 lean towards Yoel Romero, and there was one draw in the mix. How do you score the fight?
You know, I wasn't actively scoring it while I was watching, but this was a little easier to score to me than I thought obviously the Jean and Joanna fight. I had Adesanya winning slightly by just slightly. I couldn't even tell you which rounds I thought that he won, but just slightly, just by a little bit more activity and just, I don't know, just a little bit more showmanship, maybe ring generalship or cage generalship is what I thought maybe won him that fight. But based on, activity, I wasn't really scoring.
Looking at Israel Adesanya, I mean, it's clear the next fight is written, on the board. It's going to be Paulo Costa. The fight, makes sense. He's in line, recovering from an injury. But looking at Yoel Romero, I'm not sure where he goes from here because, a title opportunity is definitely going to have to be earned by him. If anybody's going to do it, it's going to be Yoel Romero. I'm not afraid of, necessarily the wheels falling off per se, but I do wonder what the fan desire will be for Romero should he, put together 2 or 3 wins. I think he's going to take a backseat to anybody that is a potential contender that is even on the same level or maybe even a couple, rungs below in the rankings because of tonight's performance. We've seen Yoel Romero in title fight after title fight after title fight, and one time he failed to make weight. The other time was an absolute war and a barn burner. Tonight, obviously not the performance that really anybody wanted from him in this title fight. What is he going to have to do, Dean, do you think, to get back to a title opportunity? Because while I don't think he necessarily did anything to say that he, isn't an elite middleweight, he just might not be an elite middleweight that a lot of people are willing to see in that title picture again anytime soon.
Well, here's the thing, and I think him and Joanna are in very similar positions. They are in positions where they're not suited to be champion. I mean, that's just the way it is. And I mean, I hate to say it that way, but you know what's good for business? When a champion's a champion for a long time, we could say this guy's defending the belt, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times. That's good for business. But when the belt keeps switching hands, that's not really good for business unless you switch it into the hands of a person who's going to be the champ for a long time. Now, it's clear that both of them, now let's look at Yoel, like he's never won the title. He gets to that position, he can't win it. So what happens if he does win it? He's probably going to lose it right afterwards. So, I mean, the idea of putting him in that position to be the title holder is not a good idea, really. So, I mean, I don't see why they would give him an opportunity to be in that position. And kind of the same thing with Joanna. I mean, they're going to have to earn it, but it's just hard to say, all right, we trust you to put you in this position to be the champ. And then what's going to happen? You're probably going to lose the next time because it took you 4 tries to get the belt. Like you weren't exactly the guy, like you weren't exactly the Israel Adesanya who came up, won it, and started defending it. So, I mean, I think that the reality is that we want champions to be made of that championship material that can get there and hold that belt the way George St. Pierre did, the way Demetrius Johnson did, John Jones. I mean, these guys are true champions, and they're just special. And I don't see that same demeanor in that same constitution when I look at a guy like Yoel Romero. I hate to say that.
He's Dean Thomas. I'm TJ DeSantis. This is Beatdown After the Bell of UFC 248, Adesanya versus Romero here on Between Rounds Radio. We encourage you to give us a ring. The number is 917-UFC Talk. That is 917-832-8255. Would love to hear your thoughts on tonight's proceedings. Let's go back to the co-main event before we get to some of the other performances turned in tonight. Zhang Weili victorious over Joanna Jędrzejczyk It was a war, fight of the year type of battle. I think it definitely set the bar thus far here in 2020. What did Zhang Weili do you think, Dean, to ultimately get the judges on her side? I mean, she definitely ate some of the offense of Ian Jacek. Joanna's forehead was looking nasty towards the end of the fight, but we know that damage is not necessarily a criteria in mixed martial arts judging. Over the course of 5 rounds, what did you think that the champion was doing to ensure that she was getting a 10 next to her name on the scorecard?
Well, there's two things, and one you may agree with, and the other one you may or may not agree with, but you're definitely not going to like it. The first one is she hit her with the bigger shots, and that was clear. It was when, especially in that first round, it was very clear that whenever she hit Joanna felt it more than Weili did. Now, it took a while for the toll to start taking on Weili when she was getting hit by Joanna shots, but it was very clear and very early when she started hitting Joanna would feel it, and I think that was the major deciding factor. And if there is the second major deciding factor, you're not going to like this one. It's that age-old saying that we have: you got to beat the champ.
Don't say it.
And I'm telling you,
no!
that's what it is. I'm not saying that I agree with it. I'm not saying that I agree with it, but I'm telling you, that's the mentality that we have. If you're going against a champ, you got to take it from him. And I'm not saying that I agree with it, because if you told me that Joanna won that fight and she walks away with the belt, I'm like, okay, she did, because I thought she fought a valiant fight. She gave a great performance. But in the eyes of many people and the judges that we still have today, they're still thinking like, you got to beat the champ and take it from him. And I don't agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, you do have to beat the champ, and you beat the champ by getting more 10s next to your name than they do. And the idea, though, I mean, this isn't volleyball. In volleyball, you have to win a match by 2 points. In mixed martial arts, you don't.
You just have to win. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and like
scored the same.
We need to get over this idea, and that's one thing. I mean, I don't have a problem necessarily with anyone thinking that Israel Adesanya won this fight. I do think that it was probably closer to a 48-47 card than a 49-46 card, but that card may be explained by that age-old adage: if you want to be the man, you got to beat the man. And I don't know. I hate it. When I hear that, I cringe. I'd rather go to the dentist and get a root canal than hear people say that.
Listen, it's not fair. And that was why I knew when they were reading the scorecards for Adesanya that, even though I thought it was close, I said, you know what? Romero didn't take it from him. He didn't do anything to want to take it from him. And these judges, obviously, with that last fight, that's the way they're scoring it. They're looking at it like, hey, listen, you want to beat the champ, you got to really, really, really beat the champ. And you're right, it's not fair, because all the fights should be scored on the same playing field, not because somebody has a belt and the other one doesn't. If somebody wins the round, they win the round. Doesn't matter how large of a margin it is.
Last night in Kansas City, Invicta FC did its Phoenix Series card, and it was the first time in mixed martial arts that we had open scoring. And I'm not going to lie, Dean, I was a bit nervous for it. Open scoring. I mean, in mixed martial arts, better than anybody, sometimes the judges do their math. They get in there and they go, and your winner, Matt Serra. And then they come back and find Dean Thomas in the back and go, oh, wait, you won that fight. Sorry, we got to go talk to Matt. But I really liked it. And the Kansas Commission pulled it off in a really great way. And I don't know, Dean, I know that there's probably a lot more work that needs to be done to get this sort of, graduated to the higher levels, but open scoring, maybe that would have changed this fight tonight in the main event. Maybe that would have been sort of the impetus to maybe, make Yoel Romero turn up the pace a bit more, because I mean, Max Holloway has beaten this drum. Many people have repeated it. I feel the same way. Mixed martial arts is the only sport on the planet where you have no idea what the score is in the final moments of the match in the game. And when championships are hanging in the balance, that's ludicrous to think that you have no idea if you're winning or not.
And I'm going to tell you a prime example of where I thought that would have been a good case. And it was the fight tonight with Marco Madsen and Austin Hubbard.
Sure.
Going into that last round, I mean, it was pretty evident who was winning that fight. But, when you have open scoring, I think it puts a little bit more burden on the judges to score it properly. Now, to me, that last round of that fight, Austin Hubbard should have got a 10-8 round, and that fight should have been a draw. But because, you can withhold your scoring and these guys don't know, I mean, it's just not much of a burden. It's almost like you can have anybody do this and just score it, and, that's just what it is. But to me, you're robbing everybody the opportunity of a career. Now, to me, that fight should have been a draw because that was a 10-8 round, in my opinion. But the fact that, like, there's no real criteria of the scoring. There's no burden on these judges to get it right. It's bad all around, and we need to fix this.
Right. I completely agree. And the way that the commission did it in Kansas, they had it where only the corners were notified what the score was. It was up to them on whether or not they wanted to tell their fighter that. And, there was a split decision in the main event in a title fight, and it was the most anticlimactic split decision ever because we knew that the fight was already won by the blue corner heading into the 5th round. And it was great because you knew exactly what was going on, and people need to be held accountable. What better way than to be held accountable in real time? But also, if you're the fighter and you feel you're on the wrong side of it, go out there and do something about it.
Well, and that was my other point about the Austin Hubbard fight with Marco Madsen. Like, it was pretty, like I said, it was pretty evident that he was down by 2 rounds. His corner was like, "Hey, you need to go out there and pull the trigger. You need to do something," because it was so clear that he was down. Now, if it wasn't that clear that he was down, his corner wouldn't have said that to him, and he may not have fought the same way. But he did because he knew he was down. Now, if we had open scoring and you're down, you're going to go out there and give it 100% to try to catch up. And that's why I think that puts more of a burden on the judges to get the scores right, because that was absolutely based on the criteria a 10-8 round. I mean, he dropped old boy a couple times. I mean, he really put it on old boy. And that was a 10-8 round, and I think he was robbed of a draw. He should have got a draw, but he's got to go home with an L.
Yeah, unfortunately, those things do happen in mixed martial arts, and what better way to combat it, though, than by putting the scores on a scoreboard and, letting the fighters at least know, look, we need to double the intensity. We need to change the game plan, because that's another thing, too. We don't know what the judges are really looking at. We can talk all day about how you're supposed to score a fight based on effective striking and grappling and then aggression and octagon control in that order, but that's all subjective. It's still subjective at the end of the day. And if I'm, getting beaten up and in the last 90 seconds of every round, I secure a takedown and I go back to my corner and see that I won the round, I figure, well, wow, I don't really need to do much in the first part of this fight as long as I get this takedown in the last 90 seconds. And I'm not saying that's right, but at least I know that that's scoring points. And that's, the Joe Rogan said it tonight, like, oh, these takedowns here, it scores points. It doesn't, in the sense that you're going to get 13 points or, 4 more
right,
points.
Yeah, you don't know.
Right,
yeah.
Right. But when it comes to getting that 10 next to your name as the round winner, yeah, it is scoring points.
You should know that, but that's what I'm saying. You should know that because some judges might give you the points for that, but you should know it. And then you say, oh, I'm getting points for this, I need to do this, or I'm not getting points for this, so I better stop doing that. I need to change my strategy.
Well, I mean, if I'm the fighter that's given up the takedown in the last 90 seconds and know that this guy is going to keep doing it, I'm going to be working on some jump knees in the last 90 seconds on these, takedowns, and maybe I can walk away with a Jorge Masvidal, Ben Askren-like knockout. You know what I mean?
It's fair. It's only fair.
100%. Beneil Dariush gets the win tonight over Drakkar Klose. Dariush had the back of Klose for 2 or 3 minutes in the first round. It was that sort of standing rear naked choke position. Klose was able to fight it off. In the second round, Klose came out pretty aggressive, hurt Dariush, backed him up a bit, and then got a little bit too aggressive, where Dariush came back firing and dislodged the mouthpiece, got the knockout, the first time Klose has ever been finished in his MMA career. Beneil Dariush doing it big. What a performance by him. When you look at his losses, all of them are by way of stoppage due to strikes. We saw him take some punishment, but return in kind, and ultimately he gets his hand raised via TKO. Really nice performance, I think, for the Rafael Cordero trained Beneil Dariush.
Yeah, that was a fight where I was looking at it, and it's funny because I had known you'd watched him get knocked out by Barbosa and and a few other guys, and Joe Rogan's talking about him getting knocked out. And just before it happened, I go, man, he's about to get knocked out. And then he just turns it around and knocks Jakar Close out. And then you just go, wow, Jakar Close got greedy. And that's really what it was. He got greedy and forgot about his defense. But but you got to give Beneil Dariush a lot of credit for putting up that gutsy performance to not allowing himself to get knocked out, knowing that that's been kind of his Achilles heel, and not allowing that to happen, and just going out there and saying, you know what, I'm not getting knocked out today. He's hit me too many times. I'm not getting knocked out. I'm turning it around and I'm putting you out. And I don't know if we've ever seen him knock a guy out like that, but that was phenomenal.
It was 100% phenomenal. I think. Not only was the power phenomenal that he was throwing that landed, but like you said, he turned a bad situation around in a heartbeat. I mean, he was definitely hurt, and instead of going too defensive, he decided to throw back in kind, and that's what ultimately got him the victory. Jakar Close, the biggest knock against him was he hasn't finished anybody. He just doesn't win fights by way of stoppage. I think he, smelled the water or the blood in the water, and really wanted to put away a guy like Beneil Dariush. But I mean, that's what happens. You said it yourself. Like, he just got a little bit too greedy. And then, I mean, 4-ounce gloves and world-class athletes. It doesn't matter how badly they're hurt. They can end your night in a heartbeat. And Beneil Dariush did just that. Neil Magny really put on a fantastic performance tonight after a very long layoff. He comes back after nearly a 2-year layoff to take out Li Jingliang. Unanimous decision goes the way of Magny. There were multiple times where I thought that Magny was going to get a stoppage here. Some people believe in ring rust, others don't. I don't know where you come down on the fence, but ring rust or no ring rust, Neil Magny looked just as good as he ever has inside the octagon.
Man, I tell you what, I was about to put this tweet out as soon as this fight ended. I was about to say, whatever Deontay Wilder did to ruin black people for Black History Month, Neil Magny put it back in our favor with that performance. Because I tell you what, man, I was so happy and so proud of him for what he did. I've been following Neil Magny. I've known him for a long time, and I've never seen him look as good as he did in this fight. In fact, I always thought, to be honest, I thought he was kind of overrated before this. And I thought that what's his name? Li
Jingliang.
Yeah, so that's the guy. I'm bad with names. So I thought that he was going to win. I said, man, he's going to beat Neil Magny. Neil Magny, he's been on for too long. He's kind of overrated anyway. He just lost Santiago Ponzinibbio. Man, that Neil Magny, the performance that he put up today, the focus that he had, the pressure, the amount of activity, just focused activity, he would have beat anybody in the world today. I firmly believe that tonight was his night to be the best 170-pound fighter in the world. Like, I can't remember a performance that I've seen. He did everything shy of just putting this guy away against a good fighter who that guy was a great fighter. And Neil Magny just shut him down, shut him out. And I was really proud of him.
Off a layoff even. So if Neil Magny can come back and look like the greatest welterweight on the planet in his comeback fight, what's he going to look like in 3 months when he gets that next fight? Because if this Neil Magny is here to stay, welterweights, I mean, they definitely have their hands full dealing with this young man moving forward. Speaking of welterweights, we'll stick with that division. The Brazilian Cowboy, Alex Oliveira, takes a split decision over Max Griffin. Griffin had some moments in this fight, but Alex Oliveira is a tough out for anybody. And, what he did over the course of 15 minutes, while it was a split decision, his style played a little more favorable to the judges.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with Alex. I trained him for a while when he was with American Top Team, and I also fought him when Will Brooks. Well, not me personally, but I coached Will Brooks for a little bit when Will Brooks fought him. He ended up beating Will. But I'm very familiar with Alex Cowboy, and he's such a great guy. He's so fun. He's so playful. But what people don't realize is he possesses this ungodly strength from being a bull rider. So he's got this strong grip, and he's got really strong arms and strong kicks, and his bones are dense and hard, and he's just really difficult to deal with. And no matter who you are, he's long too. So that length is always going to give you a problem. He's very difficult to deal with, and he's long. So it's hard to really prepare for him and train for him because he does things very unconventionally. So it is not always pretty neither. So you can't really bait him into doing a lot of things that you would expect other people to do. But he's a very tough fight for anybody. And I thought Max Griffin had his hands full. I thought that the fight would have been a little easier for Cowboy going into that last round. I thought he gave up that last round. Max Griffin did a good job staying in it, staying tough. Max Griffin stayed tough, man. He took some big shots and he stayed tough. But I thought the right man won that fight.
Yeah, 100%. I agreed with the judges giving it to Cowboy Oliveira. Nice performance by him. Split decision goes the way of the Brazilian Cowboy. Talk a little bit about ring rust in the Neil Magny fight. Sean O'Malley, the Sugar Show, was back in Las Vegas. He'd been on the shelf for quite a while. Came back and was pretty impressive in the grappling tournament that he was involved in the latter part of 2019 Quintet Ultra, the team-based grappling event. He went 1-1-1 over his 3 matches there. He submitted the great Takanori Gomi very early. Got submitted by Hector Lombard, which, I mean, who's going to be mad at anybody for getting submitted by Hector Lombard, let alone Sean O'Malley, who is nowhere near the size of Hector Lombard? And then what I actually thought was his most impressive performance at Quintet Ultra was going the full regulation period with a great grappler in Gilbert Melendez and not getting submitted by Gil. O'Malley comes back tonight, full mixed martial arts rules, and again, looked like he didn't miss a beat. Really took it to Jose Quinones. And I mean, I hate to sort of buy into the hype of these young fighters before we've really seen a lot from them. But ever since Sean O'Malley showed up on Dana White's Contender Series, he has owned everything that has been put in front of him, whether it's, performing inside the octagon or getting on the mic and cutting the right promo and doing things the right way. Sean O'Malley, he's a character, but he's got it all, man. I can't wait to see his next fight and see his progression, because tonight he looked like $1 million.
Yeah, his handlers are doing a great job with him. I know his coach, Tim Welch, and I met him a few times. And even before I met him, I remember it was years ago when he first got into the UFC. And I remember him, it wasn't even at a fight that he was at. He was working out with his coach, Tim Welch. And I remember looking at this kid going, this kid is good. I mean, he was good everywhere. I mean, he was so fluid and his transitions were so smooth, and he was going from top to bottom in submissions and striking, and he was doing everything right. And I was like, he's going to be good. And you're right. He's owning everything. He's taking his career serious. It looked as though he's been able to compartmentalize the different facets of his career and really focus on them, because like you said, like, his character is down. He's got his characterization down. He speaks well on the mic. And then when it comes to the fight game, he can fight too. So like, he's kind of compartmentalized each of those different facets of the game in order to be successful and make them great. And he's doing that. I think that the UFC is going to see that, and they're going to match him up properly. They're not going to give him easy fights, but they're going to give him fights that he should probably win, and They're going to be tough for him. But it's fair for a guy like that, because I think he's done his job.
I think there's something to be said about, being groomed while also being in the UFC. The UFC is in a different place than it was when, someone like yourself was fighting, where, you had to fight tooth and nail to get into the UFC, and it was significantly harder than, I think, to stay there. I mean, there was a time where if you lost 3 of your last 4, you were getting cut. God forbid you lost 3 fights in a row, you were getting your walking papers. Now, I think that there are fighters that can, really make a name for themselves on Dana White's Contender Series and then be brought into the UFC. And you don't necessarily want to give them, cans, if you will, but you want to allow them to, be in fights where, you allow them to get the experience on that big stage and allow them to, sort of win fights and do so by playing to their strengths, and also getting them, work against opponents where you're not necessarily, again, stacking the deck against certain people, but you want to challenge fighters, and then maybe they can fall back on what they're good at and what got them there to begin with. The UFC needs to make stars. You can only make stars by promoting guys the right way and building them up. And I think there are going to be opportunities for a lot of people to really develop and find their legs as a professional fighter at the highest level in the UFC. And I think that's a good thing, Dean.
Yeah, it is, but you got to understand too is that in order for them to build you as a star, I mean, think of it like the music industry or the rap industry or whatever, the music industry. Like in order to build a star, right? They still have to have star power. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? Like
100%.
you can't just take anybody. Like you could take a guy like, Justin Bieber and you
Right.
can build him into a star because he can sing, he can
Right.
dance, he's still going to hold his own, you know what I'm saying? He's not going to be a one-hit wonder like Milli Vanilli, you know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
you can build a star, but they still have to be a star.
Right.
So when you take a guy like Sean O'Malley, like you can build him as a star because he's very well deserving of it because he is a star deep down inside. He is a star, and I think they see that in him. But the weird thing about Dana is like we talk about this, like we could build these guys up as stars. I've watched fights with Dana, privately, and Dana doesn't do it. He doesn't like look at it as like, yeah, we're trying to build this star.
Sure.
I've watched him go, yeah, man, we found this tough guy for him to fight to see what he's made of, and I'm thinking like, shouldn't you be trying to build this guy up? And he's like, no, we're going to see what he's made of. And that's the model of the UFC. They're not trying to build you as a star. They want you, if you're a star, you're going to rise to the top.
Right.
And that's the way they try to put you in positions to see if you can rise to the top if you are a star.
Yeah, I mean, it's trial by fire, right? And the cream will rise to the top. Going back to that music analogy, like you can put me in a studio and I can probably carry a tune with the right, techniques and software. There's no auto-tune for MMA.
No. Yeah, there's no auto-tune. But you gotta do it. You gotta show up and win fights.
Right.
That's your job.
Marco Madsen victorious tonight. He gets a decision over Austin Hubbard. You talked a little bit about that already. What do you think the future is for Marco Madsen? Obviously, a world-class grappler. And, finding his legs in mixed martial arts, he moves his record to 10-0. Your thoughts on his overall performance and where do you think the ceiling is for this young man?
Well, first off, I don't even know what weight class that was. What weight class is that?
155.
Okay, 155. Okay. So I thought and that's very relevant to see what his future is. I thought he looked decent, I thought he looked tough. I mean, he has a good skill set being that he can wrestle, but I don't see, he was like, oh, I could be a world champ. Like, I didn't get that from his performance tonight. I mean, he showed that he was gutsy and he can overcome some adversity and that he can wrestle, but his striking isn't that great. And I see that being a problem for him against certain guys. I mean, I don't want to take anything away from Austin Hubbard, but Austin Hubbard wasn't exactly the biggest power puncher or most devastating knockout artist we've seen. I mean, 155. You're talking about guys like Edson Barbosa and these guys that, will put you out. So, but I mean, I don't want to take anything away from Marco Madsen. I think, he fought a good fight. He did what he needed to do to win. He's an Olympian. So they're used to adversity and they know how to perform and they know how to compete. But in terms of him being a great fighter, that to me is still yet to be seen.
Yeah, it's an incredibly tough division to hang out in and have success without running into the elite. Like, I mean, obviously in mixed martial arts, the top 10, top 15 fighters, they're going to be beasts. They're going to be really hard. At 155, it's like the top 50. The top 50 are going to be beasts. And
no doubt about that.
Yeah. Speaking of world-class grapplers, finding their legs in MMA, Rodolfo Vieira was victorious tonight, gets a submission arm triangle choke over Saperbeg Safarov. Vieira now 7-0 as a pro. Did you see this fight, and what did you think?
Yeah, I saw the fight, and it doesn't surprise me. I've worked with Rodolfo for the first part of his career. In fact, he helped us out in camp with Tyron Woodley a few times, and there's some things that I learned from him that changed my entire top game. So I knew what he's capable of once he gets on top. I don't know how far he's going to go in the division just based on his limited skill set.
Right.
But when he gets on top of guys, not many guys are going to be able to get away from him. So, and I don't want to put a ceiling on his potential.
Sure.
Because I don't know what he's doing now. He's training in Orlando with some other guys, but he looked great tonight. I mean, he caught a kick to the face, and it seemed like he took kind of a desperation shot after that, which isn't a good thing. But he still overcame that kick to the face. He came back and got the arm triangle. But, once he gets on top of these guys in this division, I don't see many guys getting away from him. I just think it's going to be hard for him to get on top of some of the better guys, the
Right.
little bit more athletic guys.
That is the thing about mixed martial arts. You're still able to, fall back on your core discipline. And, I don't want to say anybody that is a one-trick pony per se, but if you're really good at one thing and no one can really stop that one thing, you're going to go a long way. Probably not to a world title, but you're going to go a long way. You're going to put together a nice record and, pick up some wins, pick up some money, and you never know. Maybe he develops and rounds out his game a bit more, and we talk about him, flirting with that top 15 status, down the road. But tonight, so far, so good for Rodolfo Vieira. Again, arm triangle goes his way. The end comes at 2 minutes, 58 seconds of round number 1. We move to the Gerald Meerschaert and Deron Winn fight. It was a fight where Deron Winn was in control for a good chunk of it. I thought he was just a few minutes away from capturing a decision if it would have reached the final bell, but Gerald Meerschaert was not having any of it. He hurts Winn, gets on top, gets the back, and sinks in a rear naked choke. Nice victory for Gerald Meerschaert. And Deron Winn, a lot of people are high on him. He has a connection with Daniel Cormier. He'll go back to the drawing board. This is his second loss in his MMA career. I'm sure he'll bounce back, but tonight belongs to Gerald Meerschaert.
A lot of people are going to look at that and say, maybe he should move to another weight class because he's like, if you ever see him in person, you're thinking like, wait a minute, this guy fights at 185. It's unbelievable how short he is, but he makes it works for him. But I think the problem with it is he's still a bit limited, and I think he fights kind of lazy because he is such a powerful guy. He does, he can just move really fast and punch you in the face really hard. So I think that causes him to not have a higher level of activity. And without that level of activity, it kind of limits what he can do because he doesn't have a lot of disguises or a lot of distractions. So I think if he doesn't fight as lazy as he did tonight, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but just the way he fights kind of lazy. He sits back and then he waits, and jumps on you. But I think if he were to fight with a little bit more activity, he could continue to fight at 185 and still do well. I mean, obviously, he's been exposed his last two fights. Obviously, with Meerschaert and against Darren Stewart, he was exposed. But I think, again, he just fights lazy and he has to find easier ways to get inside. I think he needs to do that with activity. But Gerald Meerschaert looked great when he finally turned it on. I've known Gerald for a long time, and I thought he looked great tonight. Once he got his legs under him, he fought. You could tell he had a game plan in mind, and he stuck with it because it didn't seem like it was working at first. But he stuck with it. He found the shots that he needed in order to hurt Deron Winn, got the back, choked him out, and that put him in a position to where now he's tied for the most submissions in middleweight history.
I mean, that's crazy to think about, and that's something that he's definitely going to cherish and hopefully, for him, break that record maybe in his next fight out. But, huge win for Gerald Meerschaert tonight. Giga Chikadze. Hard name to say, and tough out.
I'm not TJ. Hey. Don't even ask me to say that. Don't even ask me.
We'll call him G for your sake, not mine. I mean, I can completely say it just fine, but G tonight gets it done. He defeats Jamal Emmers. Split decision goes his way. Watching the fight, he definitely had some moments. Emmers also was doing a very good job. The commentary made me feel like Emmers maybe was in control and maybe should have won the fight. I wasn't, scoring it round by round, just kind of taking it in, looking at my phone and doing some other things. It was early in the evening. And then it was Chikadze that, got his hand raised. And then I immediately went over to MMA Decisions to sort of feel the waters and see what people were saying online. And most of the media actually came down with Chikadze taking this one. I'm gonna have to go back and watch that fight again, Dean, because again, it seemed like the commentary was definitely pro Emmers in this bout. At one time, even saying, "Look, Emmers looks like he really belongs here in the UFC," and Chikadze maybe is getting here a little bit too early. I know it was early in the night. Were you able to see this fight?
I did see the fight, and I actually thought the opposite. I actually thought the opposite. I don't even want to say the opposite, but I thought differently. I thought I thought it was kind of premature for both guys. I mean, obviously G beat Brandon Davis before, so he, proved that he deserves to be there. It's Jamal Emmers' first fight. I've seen Jamal Emmers fight. He actually beat Thiago Moises in a fight that I watched him fight in. So I know he was good, but tonight I didn't think that neither guy looked great. There were some moments that G had that he was throwing some body kicks, and I thought, wow, man, this guy's fast and he moves his feet really fast. But, and he escaped a few positions that I thought he looked okay. But I didn't see a lot from either guy that was truly impressive that made me believe that they were going to be the next big thing or something to talk about. I hate to say it that way, but it's just the way I feel about it. Sure. I think, but they're young, and that's Jamal Emmers' first fight in the UFC. He's got a lot to learn, a long way to go. And G, obviously, it's his second fight. He's got a lot to learn, a long way to go.
Yeah, I mean, competitive fight, fun fight, to have the early prelims, and both fighters are gonna move on and be better for an experience like this. But G gets the split decision. No decision necessary in the first fight of the evening when Dana Batterell defeated Guido Canetti. A left hook ends the bout 3 minutes and 1 second into the first round. Really nice performance for the Mongolian in Batterell, and vicious knockout. And it's always nice to see a knockout. It's even better sometimes when it's in the lower weight classes. And for a bantamweight, Batterell will knock your lights out.
See, and now I'm not gonna even lie, man. That was the fight I didn't see. I was trying to make sure my setup was proper.
Right.
That was the fight I did not see. But I'm happy that we have another knockout puncher in the bantamweight division, because to me I've always been fascinated by the bantamweight division, just based on the names that are in it, or the ability of these guys to knock each other out, or at least knock each other around. I mean, there's some big punchers in there: Peter Yan, Pedro Munoz, and Cody Garbrandt. Like, these guys, they're big punchers. Then you got great grapplers like Aljamain Sterling and Hani Yahya. I mean, to me, it's such a great division, man. I love the bantamweight division, and to have another guy in there who has knockout power is a good thing.
100%. I love the bantamweights. I love the flyweights, for that matter. There's so much to love about the sport of mixed martial arts right now. And while maybe we ended on a down note a little bit with the main event, tonight is a night that I'm going to remember for a long time, because of not only the co-main event in Zhang Wei Li and Ioana Jacek, putting on a show at 115 pounds, but we see these young fighters, these young up and comers on the undercard doing work. And there's never been a better time to be an MMA fan, because you can literally watch every mixed martial artist of note, get experience on the regional shows all the way to early prelims to the UFC, and you can follow a fighter's career from when they've had single digits in amount of fights. So many fighters getting on Fight Pass with 3-4 fights in their career, and you can watch them grow all the way to the UFC, and it's exciting. I know there's a lot of MMA out there, and sometimes people say, look, I can't watch everything. Yeah, don't watch everything, because you'll get burnt out, and it won't be a good thing. But the fact that you can have UFC Fight Pass and dive into that library and get familiar with pretty much everybody that is fighting in the UFC. I mean, this is something that was not a thing 10, 15 years ago, Dean. I remember having DirecTV. This was long before The Ultimate Fighter, and there was a television station. It was like a regional sports station in Florida called the Sunshine Network. And
yeah, I know the Sunshine Network. What?
Right. I remember seeing something on like MMAweekly.com that was like, tune into the Sunshine Network at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you can watch Bob Cook fight Tiki in the UFC from like 6 years ago. And I was like, I'm there. I mean, I've already seen that fight, but I'm there. It's the UFC on TV. And now it's like the UFC's on TV anytime you want.
Yeah, it's at your disposal. You have the UFC at any given time. You can follow guys, and you're right. Like you don't need to watch it all. Like I don't watch it all. I feel like I watch a tremendous amount of MMA, and there's so much that I can't watch
Right.
because you can't watch it all. But it's such at your disposal with things like Fight Pass.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing that I like about it. Like don't watch it all. Like don't watch anything but the UFC if you don't want to. But when you want to get familiar with someone that is making their UFC debut, it's just a couple clicks away. Always.
Yeah. All at your hand, right in the palm of your hand.
Yeah. Speaking of in the palm of your hand, Between Rounds Radio is in the palm of your hand. You can go get us anywhere you get podcasts. iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker. Just do a search for Between Rounds Radio. If you're one of the real cool elite, you can go to patreon.com and put your money where your mouth is and get some of our premium content. Some of that premium content is a little show called MMA Math with Dean Thomas, and you and I were kicking around some ideas. Like we always talk about the fights upcoming, and you kind of break down the path to victory for the fighters that are fighting on any given Saturday. One thing I'd like to do with you, and I think you're on board, is doing the same segment but for fighters that never fought one another, like maybe Frank Shamrock versus Kazushi Sakuraba, or Randy Couture versus Fedor Emelianenko. I would love to hear your coaching perspective on some of the best fights that never happened.
Yeah, man, I would love to do that. I'm gonna go back and do some research on some of these older guys, and you know what I would love to do too is maybe do some of the research on some of the older guys and pit them up against some of the new guys, and I think that would be interesting as well.
Yeah, like I mean, we already saw Anderson Silva take on Israel Adesanya, but what if?
But I want to do Prime versus Prime.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Prime Anderson versus Israel Adesanya. Like, I don't know. I love it. I love the idea. I also love the idea of you hanging out with me on Fight Night for Beatdown After the Bell. Hopefully we can do this more often. It's always good to get a coach's perspective of things because you just look at fights differently than most people do.
Yeah, I don't watch fights really to be like fully entertained. Like I'm studying and then I'm like looking at what they're doing and I'm not scoring them, but I'm just like studying what they're doing and how they're moving and their footwork and like different techniques. And I'm just like, yeah, I like that. That's cool. I gotta steal that.
Yeah, I want to kind of open up the request line, if you will, for this feature, MMA Math. If you want a fight broken down by Dean Thomas, leave us a message on Patreon. You can do so again, patreon.com/between rounds. You can email me direct DeSantisMMA@gmail.com or TJDeSantis@SureDog.com, and we'll kind of bank those up and add them maybe in weeks where we don't have a big main event to break down on MMA Math. Dean, I appreciate the time. Thanks for making yourself available, and we got to do it again real soon.
Yeah, let's do it again as soon as you want.
Absolutely, 100%. We will we'll be chatting very soon. I appreciate you, and we'll be talking soon. All right. I'm tired.
Peace.
I don't even know how to say goodbye to you. That's really what I'm trying to do, but the words, they're not. It's like 2:30 in the morning where you're at.
I know, man. Hey, listen. Peace out, man. I'll catch up with you soon.
There he is, Dean Thomas. All right. If you missed any part of this, check it out. Sure.com as well as iTunes and all that fun business. Please show some support at patreon.com/between rounds. All right. I'm going to bed. Thanks to Dean Thomas. Thanks to you for listening. And we'll chat soon. You just got Beatdown After the Bell on Between Rounds Radio.
Everybody, how do you do? Everybody, how do you do?